Once upon a time. Once upon a time. Once upon a time. Once upon a time.
are full of cheerfulness and courage. And when peace comes, remember, it will be for us, the children of today, to make the world smile.
I lay in the grass.
Music for the end of a film. Thank you very much.
Dear Mary, why do you stand there looking at me like that? Say, spatially dividing something substantial into slots of time, flickering, finicky, fiddly, once upon a day, and you looking a bit sick with all your hardware around your neck, for me to say something again. It's Friday afternoon and you're cold as I write this. What am I supposed to make of that? No space, just light. Would you talk to me anyway? Do you suppose it's not important, like the rain the other night that got you wet? Now, in letting sections speedy drift, incorporating pieces of the past, and me here now indulging, alone for the sound of what you said, and listening intently, ears pricked, nostrils flared, senses rising, a veritable sponge. And then you're gone. And perhaps we could sit and watch me. I think it's about time you passed the point and handed out the aftermath. My narration boring your narrative. You spelt this wrong.
Firstly, this place, Royal Academy Schools,
I mean,
without
or
grounds,
do.
there wouldn't have been
Do I want to
a
go,
Royal Academy,
if so?
certainly not a Royal Academy school.
I don't really think I want to read the rest.
Unlike many contemporaries, probably, as an heroic figure, someone who saw himself as a hero for art, someone who believed in the grand style and believed in the idea of genius and believed in the idea that genius could be achieved. The people who work hard are the ones who succeed, whatever they do. And it was once reported in the Times newspaper that Sir Joshua Reynolds, the president of the Royal Academy of Arts, is shaved and powdered and at his canvas by 9 o'clock in the morning.
What about royalty, public figures, state figures, politicians? Do you think Reynolds had achieved that level of celebrity status by the time of his death?
He certainly had, yeah, and he could go to dinner with anyone, couldn't he? And everyone would be pleased to have him to dinner, that was the thing, which was also bad for his eyesight, but he didn't know that at the time. But if that's what he wanted, celebrity, and being able to sit at the table of the highest people in the land, and he achieved it. I mean, it's odd. I think many artists would certainly claim not to want that, to want to be slightly in the background, that they don't want to be at the front of things all the time. I mean, we've got a few people. Anish is a little bit like that. He can go anywhere. But I knew him many years ago in 1980. And he was already sort of going to dinner with the Rothschilds, so he was plotting his course through British society, in order to get to the position he wanted to be in.
Do you think that is perhaps one of Reynolds' greatest legacies to the art world, and the British art world in particular, a construction of a career path for the artist, which is reflected today in the Royal Academy schools?
I think it probably is. I mean, I don't think any of the students here think that they're overnight going to become famous and rich, but there are precedents for it, aren't there? I mean, he could have been a painter in obscurity, couldn't he? But he wanted to be a public figure as well. So there was a political aspect to this too. He was very proud to be Sir Joshua, and he was very proud because there was a moment when he wasn't made court painter to George III. He was overtaken by another painter, and he thought that was it with the royal family. But he did get his knighthood, and he was put back into favour with George. So that came correct. But it's the income, I suppose, that becomes rather obscene, doesn't it? And especially, I can imagine what the area around Leicester Fields was in the 18th century. There would be very clear signs of deep poverty among some of the population of London. And here's this man who's only a brush hand, who's making thousands and thousands of pounds out of his craft. But that was his whole purpose, was to do that, was to raise the status of the artist above the level of what before then had been called a limner, someone who just went from town to town making drawn portraits of people. He wanted a very high professional status for artists, and that's what he hoped to achieve. And that's another thing that he is important for. Interesting comparison with him and Constable, for example. He came to London and then rarely went back to Suffolk, to his roots. Gainsborough also left Sudbury. First went to Bath, where he kind of honed his skills before coming to London. But he wasn't toing and froing the way that Reynolds seemed to. I don't know how many times he moved from place to place, but it was more than once, wasn't it? There must have been something in the southwest to nourish him, and I think it's quite remarkable that he didn't do more paintings of the harbour or the landscape. You know, there's one, isn't it? That's all. Because it was portraiture solely that seems to have occupied him.
But of course he established wonderful relationships with Southwest patrons, thinking of the Parkers at Saltram House
And the Elliots.
and the Elliots at Port Eliot Estate.
Like that. I think living with the embarrassing number of Reynolds portraits and paintings that we have here at Port Eliot, they slowly sort of seep into you, really. And I was particularly drawn to the portrait of Anne Bomfrey. I think you're aware start to become so aware of them as people as well as a painting. I've grown to really love that portrait. Her face expression is wistful, but you can tell that she was intelligent. She's got a sort of set to her shoulders, and she looks like she knows where she's going in life. And I rather miss it, actually, because at the moment it's at Plymouth Museum, although it's very nice for other people to see it. And it's sobering, really, to realise that many of the portraits hanging here at Port Eliot by Reynolds have been hanging here since they were painted. And I feel very, very privileged to have spent any time walking amongst them.
He had something to offer when he'd been to London. You know, he was the kid that had come back, you know, and he'd learned a lot about it, because he was obviously a quick learner. He'd learned a lot about the mores in London, and was a much more sophisticated person. So coming back, he would be a very good dinner guest, wouldn't he? Or a very good person to approach for a portrait, because he was the one who'd lived for a while in the capital. But he had both things, as you say. You know, he had the kind of rather more down-to-earth qualities of someone from the country, but also, you know, sophistication of someone who'd experienced the capital city.
Oh, that's all right there. That's fine.
Thank you.